Hanging out with the Kellers. Kathy and Tim Keller are with us, founders of Redeemer Church in Manhattan, where they were stewards for decades, also best-selling New York Times authors as well, but always happy to check in with Tim and Kathy Keller as they join us live from New York City. Hey, Kath. Hey, Tim. How you doing?
Howdy. Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
We are.
Very good. Good to hear your voice.
Already tired of winter.
Oh, are you kidding me?
I don't mind it that much.
Oh, listen, John. Oh, you guys, John is so, he's in love with winter this year. I don't know what's happened. I feel like I've lost an ally. Because one of the things about fighting a Pittsburgh winter is you want to feel like we're all on the same side against it.
Yeah, right.
But John's fallen in some way.
All right, so Kath, how was winter in New York City? I mean, is it difficult for you to, go about your daily life?
No, it's not. That's the thing. I mean, it used to be that between Christmas and spring, I would root for big snowstorms because I guess there's some memory in our past of having snow days when you say, "Oh, I don't have to do anything about it." But I've quit doing that because I know that there's a lot of people who are inconvenienced and even harmed by bad snow days. But there's part of me that still is excited whenever we get oh, it's a big snow coming. And we haven't had anything like that. We've had lots of warnings, but there's this rain-snow line that just keeps giving us the rain. So we've kind of had a lot of dreary, rainy, chilly days.
Yeah, I don't like that. Don't you feel like you were gypped or cheated somehow? Because
it's going to be cold and miserable, let's have some snow.
I agree 100%. Yeah.
Good. Boy, Tim, these two are so happy to have their snow.
No, it's good.
Okay.
I'm from eastern Pennsylvania. We had palm trees over there.
Of course, because everything's perfect inside the Philadelphia city limits.
That's right. Yeah, I live near San Philadelphia.
The sunny side, the very tropical side of Pennsylvania.
All right. Okay. Enough of this weather talk. Okay. So about a week and a half ago, and Tim, we saw that you tweeted about this. There was a clip released from Stephen Colbert's late night show, and I've appreciated a lot of things about Stephen Colbert over the years. He's a very, very bright man. And as with every late night comedian, when it gets into politics, you end up making enemies. But this wasn't a political conversation. Dua Lipa was a guest on his program, but she turned the tables on him. And instead of him asking the questions, she asked him the questions. We have this clip. Let's hear it.
I was wondering, is there any, does your faith and your comedy ever overlap? And does one ever win out?
I think ultimately, us all being mortal, the faith will win out at the end. But I certainly hope when I get to heaven, Jesus has a sense of humor. But I'll say this. Someone was asking me earlier about what this relates to faith, because my faith is involved with, I'm a Christian and a Catholic, and that's always connected to the idea of love and sacrifice being somehow related, and giving yourself to other people, and that death is not defeat, if you can see where I'm getting at there. Someone was asking me earlier, what movie did I really enjoy this year? And I said, well, I really like Belfast, which is Kenneth Branagh's story of his childhood. And one of the reasons I love it is that I'm Irish and Irish American, and it's such an Irish movie. And I think this is also a Catholic thing, because it's funny and it's sad, and it's funny about being sad. In the same way, that sadness is like a little bit of an emotional death, but not a defeat if you can find a way to laugh about it. Because that laughter keeps you from having fear of it. And fear is the thing that keeps you from turning to evil devices to save you from the sadness. As Robert Hayden said, we must not be frightened or cajoled into accepting evil as our deliverance from evil. We must keep struggling to maintain our humanity, though monsters of abstraction threaten and police us. So if there's some relationship between my faith and my comedy, it's that no matter what happens, you are never defeated. You must understand and see this in the light of eternity and find some way to love and laugh with each other.
All right, Tim. So I saw that. I thought it was remarkable for several reasons. John did as well, but you posted it in particular, and I want to hear, what was your take on that?
Well, one thing, by the way, is it clearly wasn't rehearsed. Mm-hmm. In other words, he was speaking off the cuff. This wasn't a setup for him. Partly because he was rambling a little bit. I mean, I know I've been in these public places enough where I got questions, and if you don't immediately have a almost a memorized answer. You have to talk a little bit. You're trying to
catch up.
You're actually filling in until you can kind of land the plane. But his basic idea was that, first of all, your faith always has to be part of your work. It should be connected. There shouldn't be a disconnect. Secondly, in his case, what he's simply saying is, I believe in loving people, self-sacrifice, and never fighting evil with evil, but overcoming evil with good, and always having a hope that death is not defeat, and therefore there's never really, in the end, evil will never win. And therefore, we can be happy and we can laugh, and even when things don't look good. Now, what I liked about it was, first of all, she was not asking him for a gospel presentation.
Right.
She clearly was interested in the fact that she liked his comedy, she liked his work, and was trying to figure out. I think her background, by the way, is Muslim, I think, but she wanted to find out, well, what is the relationship here? Because you see, in our culture, we're told you keep your religion out of your public life.
Right.
We're told to privatize it, to just seal it off. And the fact that he said, no, I don't, and that he had a very positive, I think, rightful way that your faith can, Christian faith can, have an influence on your work, was all very good. That doesn't mean I know anything really about how genuine his faith is, or whether he's completely consistent in every area of his life, or the state of his heart, or anything like that. But I think, as you know, if you watch Twitter, the fact that I thought this is actually a pretty good example of how you could speak to people in a winsome way that'll probably want them to tell you more about Christianity.
Right.
You don't tell them everything. You just tell them what they ask for, and you do it winsomely enough and intelligently enough that people then want to know more. But as you can tell, what happened on Twitter, because I said, hey, this is good, I got kind of blasted by people saying that wasn't a gospel presentation, and he wasn't telling her about you need Jesus and you have to believe in the cross and all that. But she wasn't asking for it, and not only that, I think it would have been frankly rude to do that under those circumstances. So you saw that. So that's what I think. I liked it too.
Yeah, I liked it an awful lot. What's interesting about it is that people see that. They see the truth, and you can feel the audience. They're kind of on eggshells at first. The energy in the room shifted several times, and at the very conclusion of it, it was almost like, a sort of sucking out of the air and then a rush forward of an exclamation point as people realized what was being presented, and they cheered. And essentially, they cheered for God.
Yeah. Yep. So but a lot of people didn't like that. I liked it.
Right.
Yeah, well, that begs a further question, which is, the segment of people who were blasting you on Twitter, would have been happier if maybe, he had used words like, justification and, penal atonement and, all sorts of things like that. But that's not the language that the question was asked in. And that's why I loved it. That's why I thought he's actually answering her the way he's answering her with the same whimsy and attitude and attention that she's asking the question.
That's exactly right. Because I think what a lot of people would say, some people said, well, he should have said, you need to repent and believe the gospel and Jesus died for your sins. He should have said that. And like you just said, she wasn't asking about that. She was asking about the relationship of his faith to his work. And for him to say that his faith actually affects his work all the time, all by itself is radical. Yeah. It was countercultural.
Right.
But then it's also true that, frankly, that would have been, you're right, in vocabulary she wasn't using. It would have been using her question as an excuse to say what you want to say about Christianity rather than an actual answer. It would have been been manipulating her.
Yeah.
Can I butt in here for a sec?
Yeah, Kath, go.
I remember in college reading Francis Schaeffer for the first time, and he used a term called pre-evangelism, that there are things that you discuss with a non-believer that will give credibility when you get to the point of saying, would you like to receive Jesus? Would you like to have a relationship with him? But you don't, it's like cooking. You spoil the souffle if you take it out too soon. You have to let God use the timing that God wants to use. And if a person is at point A, you hope to get them to point B. You don't try to drag them all the way to the end of the alphabet. And therefore, pre-evangelism is just as important as evangelism. Just saying, you're going to die and go to hell unless you accept Jesus. That's true, but that's not easy to swallow if you haven't given somebody a chance to assimilate earlier truths, like, is your life really the way you want it to be? Why isn't it? What do you think that's the cause of that?
Right.
Getting them ready to ask the questions.
Right, little tiny baby steps moving forward. As I'm watching the clip, I'm thinking, can you imagine Johnny Carson being asked that question? What his response would have been?
It would have been a joke and laughter, and that would be the end of it.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah.
Well, that's what's interesting about it, right? And that's why another reason I love the conversation is because it was two people talking. It wasn't just
we were eavesdropping.
Right. It wasn't that I'm regurgitating something that I've already planned, or I'm giving you a recitation of all of the the 5 spiritual laws. It's not that. It's that I'm a whole person and you're a whole person. And so if you're asking a question, then I'm trying to engage myself in honoring you with an answer. I just feel like we're missing each other in society today by just thinking that I have to convert you to my political party or my point of view or my immediately instead of just honoring you as a person and having a thing.
To put what Kathy
There was
said
an evangelism program around Redeemer for a couple of years ago, and I think it might still be in use. Of course, we're not in charge of the Redeemer churches anymore, in spite of what some people think. People were meeting together weekly, and then they had assignments, and their assignments were just to go out to their non-Christian friends and relatives and ask questions, not give answers, ask questions, and then listen to them. Like, what is it that disturbs you the most about when you think about committing yourself to Jesus, or what about the church is most off-putting to you? And just listen to them. And it was wildly successful because people not only wanted to tell them the answer to the question, but then they wanted to say, well, gee, you're the first person who ever actually asked me that. Can we talk some more? And it was amazing that when you started with asking them the questions rather than telling them the answers, how much further you got.
That's good, yeah. And Tim, what were you going to add there?
Oh, only that, to put what Kathy said in a slightly different way, but the same thing. Most people actually become Christians. I mean, I'm saying that certainly at a certain moment, you are a Christian or you're not. I don't mean you become Christian in stages. But in another sense, you get to the decision to become a Christian in stages. Mm-hmm. And therefore, like the first stage might be you're sitting there thinking, gee, all Christians aren't idiots. That might be the first decision that you in your mind. And the second one might be, I guess there are some reasons to believe in Christianity. Maybe the third one might be, well, I had never thought that Christianity could affect your comedy like that. That's really interesting. So what I'm saying is in their heads, there are these small steps they take toward the decision. And there are a lot of folks that don't feel like you should be letting that happen. Now, Kathy called that pre-evangelism, and I think that's right.
That's good. Hey, guys, we need to take a quick break. Can you just stick around for a few more minutes?
Oh, sure.
Oh, fabulous. Thanks. We're talking with Tim and Kathy Keller from New York City. We'll step away for just a few minutes and come back and continue on with this conversation. We're Pittsburgh's Christian Talk. This is Word FM. Checking in with Kathy and Tim Keller, founders of Redeemer Presbyterian Church in New York City, New York Times bestselling authors as well. Kathy, she is a pedigree, a Yinzer, dyed in the wool. Mm-hmm. Tim, unfortunately, raised in the Philadelphia area of the state of Pennsylvania, but we welcome them both on the air, as we always do. Yeah.
All right, you guys, so I want to pick up where we left off. We were talking about the Stephen Colbert interview, just a little clip of an interview he did with Dua Lipa where she kind of turned the tables and asked him about his faith. And I think I want to talk, Tim, about the response you got when you posted that to Twitter. So you mentioned earlier in our last segment that people got really riled up. They felt like, Stephen Colbert hadn't answered it appropriately, hadn't, laid out how then we can be saved. But I guess I'm asking about the response. You are a lightning rod in a lot of ways on social media. And so I guess I want to know how you feel about that. So when you get that type of avalanche back at you, how does that sit with you?
Well, first of all, it does help to be old, and I'm not. It doesn't feel as real. I notice that my children, younger people, 40, especially if they're in their 40s or 30s or 20s. It does seem to really rile. It rattles them more when they get pushback on social media, and so I've talked to plenty of people who've just gotten off of it because they just couldn't take the criticism. And I think there's something Kathy and I often say. It almost seems like, well, this isn't real. I don't know what this is. I don't know these people.
Yeah.
I mean, this is partly my. We are older people, and therefore embodied relationships, or even phone calls, or seeing people, those seem to be real relationships. Otherwise, I don't think I have a in fact, I don't even know whether you're not a robot. I don't know who you are. I don't know. I mean, so how can I be upset when you might be a bot of some kind? It doesn't mean. I mean, there are definitely some pretty mean things where people know I've got cancer, and they'll actually say, "I hope you die of this cancer because you're bad." I mean, that sort of thing. You look at it and you say, "Gee, okay." I mean, that can take your breath away. But by and large, no, it doesn't bother. I wonder what it says, though, about the church today. And it does feel to me that we are, we've said this before, Kathy and I both feel like that we ought to be united by our faith across political differences, but we are not anymore. Mm-hmm. There was a time in which, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whether you're, Pittsburgh, Kathy's dad worked for Westinghouse in management, and Kathy's Uncle Bart, remember, right, Kathy?
Yeah.
He was a union guy, U.S. Steel, right? Or no?
Yep.
Yeah, and they were, and they would, they'd get at each other. They'd come over together and drink their beers together and get at each other a little bit on politics. But they weren't Christians. But I'm saying it wasn't as divisive. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't. And now it is. And Christians should be the people who don't get sucked into the anger and and talking about the other side as being not just mistaken but evil.
Right.
But we are, and that's what it tells you, and that's sad.
Yeah, and so, Kath, what about you? As Tim's wife, you absorb these blows as well. Do you want to lash out?
No, not at all. The only time I go to social media is to correct some error of fact that somebody has inadvertently absorbed, and I'll be happy to correct a factual error, but as far as the emotion, I think the internet attracts people who want to be outraged, and yes. Tim catches it both from the right and from the left, and they both think he's, a traitor to the other side, and I had a dear honorary grandmother, you know what that is, an extra grandmother, a friend of the family, who in her later years fell into what we now know as Alzheimer's, etc. And my mom used to come home from visiting her and say, "Oh, she said she had lunch with, her husband who's been dead for 50 years. Oh, and I'd say, Mom, Mamie's in the nursing home. You don't go there expecting.
She's lost her mind, so don't get upset. That's what she does.
So, yeah. And so Tim and I actually have a little saying that, when people are acting completely off the wall, like Mamie's in the nursing home, you can't hope for a reasoned, gentle, persuasive interaction on social media. It's not built for that. It's built to attract and inflame outrage, and therefore, if you go there expecting to have something else besides that, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah,
You know,
that's a good point.
It's social media. Social media is in the nursing home.
Yeah.
And
Well, we're gonna have T-shirts made.
Yeah.
Social media. Okay, so maybe the deeper concern then for all of us is why we have become unable to see people who believe in the same Jesus we believe in as our brothers and sisters first.
It happens everywhere.
Instead of seeing people in our own political party as our brothers and sisters first, and then somehow the people who believe in Jesus as enemy. And I guess it's simplistic to say, how do we get back to that? Or how do we move forward into that?
Or can we?
Or can we? I guess is probably the best question.
What do you think, Tim?
well,
Yeah,
do
Jeff.
the math. I just want to. I'll do this real short because Tim has a better answer. But do the math. You're in church for 1 week, an hour,
Right.
or 1 hour a week, and maybe you have a small group for another couple hours a week. And how many times are you watching, you know, the news or the reading, doing the podcasts, or on social media, listening to the echo chamber that just tells you what you already believe? We are not forming ourselves. We are not being formed. We are not forming the people in our churches with the gospel and with the Bible the way they're being formed by all these other influences that have far more time to affect them.
But, you know, at the same time, doesn't it break your heart? Because I think everybody's lost friendships, or friendships have been altered because of this. People that you knew
Families
and you
have been
thought that
altered.
you know,
Churches
you
have
loved,
changed.
everything's changed. People that, you know, it's just topsy-turvy.
Oh,
By the way,
absolutely.
one problem is, though, and it might get better, is when we do finally, I think we will have to get past COVID. I mean, I was just talking just before you called. I was talking with one of the pastors of one of our churches here, and he said there are just lots and lots of people in his church that are in his church, but that he's probably only actually seen face to face 2 or 3 times in the last 2 years.
Wow.
And what that means is we're not being formed by our churches or our communities anymore. We are being formed online. We're being formed by what we're watching, and I think that it's possible that has definitely hurt the polarization. It does create the polarization to some degree. I'm hoping that might ameliorate. It might I don't know, lessen. I'm hoping, but ultimately, I think every church has got idols that we can fall into, political idols or material idols, or and we may just need to repent. Just need to repent.
Yeah,
I'll take that.
I'll take that too. All right, so our time's winding down. Tim, we want to hear about your health. How are you doing?
Oh, if those of you who want to pray, and I know that we're getting lots of prayers, is I have a scan coming up February 28th.
Okay.
And so that scan's every 3 or so months, and everybody who's got cancer knows you kind of live from scan to scan. At the end of the scan, you have an idea, okay, here's where we are, and this is what we're going to be doing for the next 3 months. And then your whole life can change with a new scan. So So it's not easy. It's not easy to come up to it for either of us. You know, you spend a lot of time in prayer, so pray for it. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm doing fine right now, but the scan will tell me.
Yeah, he's as healthy as ever, and he's Tim, you should tell everybody. One of the things that has been informing, I hope I can say this fast enough so I don't run out of time.
No,
one of the things
you're
that's
good.
been very, very helpful, and Tim, you could say more about this than I did, is he's been interacting with our global church planting partners in India and Africa and Europe and Asia for hours every week, really, writing a series of papers talking about, what do we believe about this? What do we believe about that? Getting their feedback. What is the issues in their own culture? What is the pressures of them? So seeing the health of the global church, they have their own problems. They have problems with the church that's in India, the church that's in China, et cetera, et cetera. But they're not the problems that we have. And that's actually an encouragement to say we tend to get fixated on what's going on in North America with the political divide there. Globally, Christ's body is facing other things in other parts of the world, but the whole church, the church as a whole, is not decrepit. It's not dying. It's not going away. It's struggling, but we need to help each other. Tim, do you want to say more about that? The global partners.
Well, What Kathy means is that I don't work for the church anymore. I work for the church planning network that my church started. And even though I don't travel, I actually, because of the Zoom world that came up, I actually spend every month. I actually spend 4 2-hour meetings with about 80 leaders around the world. Wow. And they're generally younger church planters and church leaders in the great global cities on every continent. And it's very, it's a lot more hopeful. In other words, when you're stuck in one country, you can't help. Yeah. The whole church seems to be the church that I know right here. But honestly, people who believe the gospel, are Bible believing, believe in the atoning work of Jesus, the necessity of the new birth, they're all over the world, hundreds of millions of them. And they have their own problems in there. So if you're an Indian Christian, you have your own problems, and if you're a Nigerian Christian, you have your own problems in their culture. But what's great is you see the commonalities, and it's really good to have friendships across those barriers, it's pretty rare. Most of us don't have that. It's a great privilege that I can. Even Kathy doesn't get to do all that. And it just lifts me up. It makes me hopeful. Yeah, it makes me much more hopeful. That's what Kathy's trying to say.
Right.
Have hope. It's out there. The gospel, nothing's really stopping the gospel. It's continuing to move forward.
That's good. So within the slice of that, you see a little bit of heaven, hopefully.
I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Very good.
All right, before you leave us, Kat, did you hear about the Squirrel Hill Bridge that collapsed?
I did. Saw the pictures and everything, and I have been over that bridge a million times.
What the heck?
You guys, it was so crazy.
Going down to see Mamie, in fact. From Monroeville down to where she was. Took that bridge a lot of times.
Yep, so there you go.
How about that? Okay, well
listen,
good to talk
Pittsburgh
to you
sends
too.
our regards to both of you guys. We love you and praying for you both, and stay strong, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
Our pleasure.
Love you both. Tim and Kathy Keller. Always happy to visit with the Kellers,
Heck
right?
yeah.
Don't you love them?
I mean, I love that perspective of Tim being in that driver's seat in some way.
Just get out of where you are, and just think about the bigger picture.
It's a big global church, and everyone's got their own problems, but we're all focused on Jesus in heaven.